Thank you everyone for joining us today on Let's Talk Business series by RealtyNXT. So before we start with the discussion, I want to know from each one of you, what is you guys up to in terms of your company and what are you so passionate about specifically for this PropTech sector? Starting with you, Kshitij.
Thanks for inviting us. Kritika, it's honor to be here. So I'll tell you briefly what we do. I'm the CEO and co-founder of TEAL, the Economics and Analytics Lab, a technology startup. We're working on trying to digitize property land records across the country. And what we do is we essentially take information from various different sources around government departments, so sub-registrar offices, municipal records, courts, development authorities, and so on, and try to create a single point of reference to understand whether a property has a dispute, whether the title is clear, whether there's any other legal encumbrances that might end up causing a problem for a potential lender against a property or a home buyer. And our primary customers right now are mainly lending institutions, and we work in 14 different states currently. We have more than 100 million properties on our platform, and we're trying to increase that. And we serve some large customers such as HDFC, Tata Capital, Home First, Aadhar Housing Finance, and we're trying to expand it to as much of the country as we can.
Sarabjeet, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So, hi Kritika, thanks for inviting. I'm looking forward to an amazing discussion today. I'm the co-founder and CEO for Zeassetz. Zeassetz is the subsidiary of Zolostays. Zolostays is a very well-known name in the co-living industry. We are trying to solve the problem of an investor. So, with the help of technology, we are bringing a lot of selected, curated properties where they can invest for a long term and can get amazing returns with zero worry of owning a residential real estate. Compared to the market returns of 1 to 2%, we are offering high returns as 5 to 6%. And there's no hassle of maintaining the property or hassle of tenant management and all. With the help of technology, we are trying to give them the opportunities to invest remotely, exit remotely, and enjoy all the benefits without even being there at the site or the property location. So that is what we are trying to solve for.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kritika, for inviting me. I'm Abhilash. I run a company called IB Homes. We are a technology company in the residential real estate space. What we essentially do is we make instant offers to buy homes. So selling a house is a very painful process in India. If you would say own an apartment in Bangalore, it could take you between 6 months to a year to sell if things go well. We are able to make an offer in a week. We then buy the property on our books, we refurbish it and further sell it.
So Abhilash, what makes you so passionate about this PropTech sector?
Well, a couple of things here, Kritika. One is I think that technology in the real estate sector, the uptake has been fairly minimal. And when you talk about real estate tech, the first thing people think of would be the digital classifieds, right? Whether it's 99 acres, Magic Bricks, etc. But we should realize that evolution happened maybe 10, 15 years ago, probably 15 years ago. Since then, uptake of technology has been fairly minimal. And let me kind of contrast it to other sectors, right? If we take classifieds in particular, the typical evolution has been from, say, a very generic classified like OLX and Quicker to a vertical focused classified. So 99 acres, Magic Bricks is one example of it. It just makes kind of search and discovery a lot easier. To typically a transactional setup where more problems can be solved, a better customer experience can be delivered. And we've seen the same thing play out in several other sectors, right? So cars, for example, cars went from, say, OLX and Quicker to, car trade, which was more just discovery of cars in a vertical platform, to a company like Spinny or Cars24, where you own the entire transaction. And real estate has been really lagging behind. Real estate is also personally close to me because, I grew up in a family where my dad used to run a small real estate business. While I have personally not worked in it prior to starting IB Homes, it's something that I've always understood because most dinner table conversations at home have been around that.
Okay. Sarabjeet, what made you passionate about this sector?
So, since my younger days, I always wanted to invest into real estate. I always wanted to own real estate. I come from a business background, and I always wanted to become an entrepreneur and use my own earned money to be invested into real estate across the country. And when I moved to Mumbai in 2011-12, I landed with a dream that I should have an apartment there in Mumbai. And from there, this journey started. And so if you see investors like us, we don't have much choices because we travel a lot, we work in different cities. We don't want to own a house, but we want to have an investment which should be easier to choose from, should be worry free, and the entry point should be very, very less. So this is what I was trying to solve, because with a limited sum of money with me, I wanted to buy multiple properties. That is where I come from, and this is what I'm trying to solve, because in my business, my consumer enters with only paying 10% and a minimal net EMI of 5,000-6,000 or 10,000 rupees a month. The cost of ownership, the entry barrier is so amazing that anyone can invest. So this is what I was passionate about, and happy to say that today I have properties across five metro cities of the country, and I want everyone like me to have this portfolio with limited sum of money.
Nice. What about you, Kshitij?
Yeah, so I had a sort of non-traditional, route to this sector. So I studied economics. I'm a data, sort of geek. I worked in different capacities in urban and housing markets across different places. I worked in the global urban housing team of the World Bank. Worked in Housing.com a few years ago, and also in the government side. So I think one thing that has always attracted me to the housing market is that there is a lot of problems we saw that affect a lot of people, and a big part of that is transparency. So, for instance, you don't really know what is the actual market price of a property here. It's obfuscated. There's a lot of black money in the sector. So, what it ends up causing is that you don't really have an understanding of how the true kind of market value of property would work. Similar thing on the legal side. Right? So, 2/3 of civil litigation in India are landed property disputes. That's something that persists for a long period of time. The average time to resolve a case is more than 20 years when it comes to landed property. So I've been looking at this space, for a period of time with these type of issues. But I think one opportunity that now we are presented in, that there's a marked change in terms of efforts by different state governments and the central government to also try to formalize and digitize a lot of the records that are there. And the scale that you can now reach in terms of being able to build on top of that is very attractive. It's very interesting, and we have a lot of technologies that are available to us in terms of AI, machine learning, to be able to clear and organize this and do it in a cost-effective way at scale. So I think that's why we started on this journey, and we thought, how much of a difference can we make, with this? And obviously, there's a lot of things that are still offline in the real estate sector, but this is one area that at least we thought, and for me, it was a big attraction, that we can really make a difference in terms of how many people we can provide more transparent information for, and reduce litigation, reduce fraud, and reduce potentially critical loss in a big investment in your lifetime that you would make.
So I want to ask from all of you, the very crucial, important question is, in 2003 and 5, between that era, we have seen the launch of 99 Acres, Magic Bricks. And then in 2012 and 16 ke aspas, we saw the launch of Common Flow, Housing, a lot of other companies coming in. But every time investors have always said, there's a time for the Proptech to take off. It will take time for the Proptech to take off. And we are now standing 2023, and we are hearing the same dialogue. So where do you think the Proptech sector is facing the challenge, and when will actually the Proptech sector will take off in India? So according to you, Abhilash?
I obviously think the time is now. Of course, my answer is particularly biased because we are in this sector. However, see, a lot of the ingredients for things to take off are currently present now. One of the things Kshitij mentioned, for example, is digitized property records. That's a very large underlying infrastructure that is required to build any kind of transactional system on top of these existing classifieds, right? So this is an infrastructure which has existed around the world. So in the US, for example, just the property price data is called the MLS, the multiple listing service. The second aspect is there is a significant shift in user behavior with regard to technology and startups. See, real estate has always, people buying homes or selling homes have traditionally been extraordinarily conservative. Now, I think there is a lot of goodwill for what technology companies are doing in general, which is why we believe that even this is the right time where consumers are also okay to adopt technology in sectors to make their life easier. And while real estate has been lagging, I feel this is the right time. Additionally, we are, Kshitij again spoke a lot about data, right? I think the progress in artificial intelligence and machine learning over the last decade will have a very direct impact in property. Like we have seen it have an impact with fintech or some of these other industries as well.
Kshitij, what do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think the longer arc of history, if you look at it, I think it's interesting you started that period when the first classifieds came. We've seen these different waves, right? And I was at housing at that time when obviously SoftBank money had come in to try to figure out a more tech-based approach to listings. In a way, a lot more focus on design and so on, the consumer experience. And now, 8 years on from that, I think there's been money that has been put into the sector, but it's not clear to me that necessarily it's led to the best outcomes in terms of sustainable business models like the last. I think that's the period we are, to some extent now they may be declining, but the way every sector has gotten an influx of cash, Proptech is sort of the last in that chain to kind of get that. Fintech obviously had that. Proptech now there is a lot of cash, but I think it's chasing maybe limited sustainable business model. And the reason for that is we also realized early on that building a consumer business in real estate is hard. If you look at the listing portals that have been there for now, 20 plus years, even them, they're struggling, to make consistent profits, right? One or two of them will make profits every year. And that sustainable trajectory of growth is still very, very high, right? And so we also, initially were, providing to end users our data, what, we had digitized, we had, kind of provided. But we thought that the customer acquisition cost for that would be very high. And so essentially we started working with the lenders, and they are in fact, de facto due diligence kind of function, because a lot of people get loans from a reputable lender just so that they can at least get the due diligence, of getting that this has been, provided by an HDFC, they would have done their due diligence, right? So, and we found that to be a lot more sustainable in terms of growth, because the customer acquisition side requires a lot of marketing, requires, essentially the customer journey to be tracked, which is very hard in an advertising-based model for consumers in real estate, because it's basically short periods of active engagement and then complete drop-off, right? So building ad models on that is very hard, which anyway in India is tough. So what they ended up doing was monetizing through brokers. Obviously now that, there are models to try to kind of disintermediate that, but that has happened over many periods of time in the past, and it's been somewhat hard to do. So I think I'm a little bit, less sort of, I think it's obviously a sector which will grow and, will provide those returns, but I really think the sustainable business models are the ones that should be, the ones that actually can get the funding. And then, because otherwise too much cash can then also lead to essentially going away from that direction, which you think easy money is always going to be available. And, genuine entrepreneurs, genuine businesses may not get built unless if you have those sort of distractions that you have to kind of keep up with, in terms of getting talent, in terms of getting, other resources, chasing the right now.
Quite interesting. I'll come back to that. But before that, Sarabjeet, what's your take? Are you also optimistic like Abhilash that 2023 has come for PropTech sector now?
So I would say the time is now, but not 2023.
Yeah.
And I will agree with both the gentlemen. But yes, looking at the past, my experience, I was also with PropTiger while we merged with housing, and I know all that. So that point of time, it was very high. The kind of investment coming into PropTech sector was very high. But now, because of the non-sustainable businesses, profits, even the investors have taken a small step back, and they're also looking forward that how this will grow or will sustain. And with that, I think if we want to evolve, we need a good amount of money to be coming into this sector, and then a lot of experiments need to be done. AI, ML, all these technologies need to be brought in. I think the consumer is also ready now. As a consumer, I'm also looking forward to use technology to figure out what to buy, what not to buy, when to buy, how much I need to invest, and all that. I think the entire ecosystem is ready, but I think it will take some more time to kind of reach there.
So as you said, for consumer basis, you all three have spoken about. But what about those PropTech sector, the companies which are doing for example, the developer, they're building tech, and it's said by investors that building tech for developer and monetizing over it, it's quite difficult for those tech companies. And when we see procurement companies like Off Business and Infra Market, they are profitable business. They are doing huge. I think their revenue is also touching the $1 billion. So where do you think the problem is lying? Is it only towards the consumer also, or even the tech front, the people who are building for developers? Secondly, which sectors, according to you, is going to gain a lot of profitable business? Like how we have seen with the procurement, a lot of companies are coming in and they're doing good revenue. They are like profitable. You can call them unicorns also. So what's your take on that?
I think sectors like property management, I think that's one sector. Then the asset management, then investment into real estate, only pure investment. I think these sectors will grow with the help of PropTech, and I think there will be a lot of margins in these kind of businesses, and hence they'll be sustainable. And looking at it, there'll be investment coming into these sectors, and I see there's growth in these sectors as per me.
What's your take on that?
Sure. So I think it generally helps that in the last 4-5 years, even on the real estate developer front, things have become a lot more formalized. Of course, RERA was a big step there, which means that as things are more formalized, things are more organized, it's easier for, say, construction tech companies where they're kind of building out on a SaaS model to have paying customers. So I see no reason why companies can't do well there. You mentioned procurement. The one thing that I want to mention there is Off Business, Infra Market. The reason they are able to do well is because they're able to own that transaction, create which captures most of the value, which is something in real estate has been hard, especially if you talk about people even supplying to developers, because the value capture ends up happening at the developer. Apart from that, I think one very interesting area is the kind of augmented reality field which is coming up. Most developers have always been used to selling homes which don't exist. So literally it is being sold on a brochure, or pretty much on the brochure, right? I think tools which help that sales process will find immediate product market fit.
Great. Kshitij?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much of the ins and outs of those businesses that you mentioned, but I think in terms of selling to developers, in terms of like tech products and tech services, selling to developers is not a big market right now. And the reason is because, see, from a developer perspective, right, like what are the kind of main pain points? The first pain point is that they need to get the land. So acquiring the land, clearing or getting clearances, permissions, all that. Then actually constructing it, getting the financing in multiple tranches, and getting the buyers, then marketing, and so on. So most of those processes are offline processes, right? Which they are good at, and that's how they distinguish themselves. And very rarely do you see pan-Indian developers, right? Like a developer usually has a stronghold, a successful developer has a stronghold in a particular geography or a state at most.
Right.
Now there are few that are entering other stuff, and the reason for that is because they have the know-how how to get supply and build and supply that project, whatever it takes. And so I think even for us, I mean, we've had developer customers and provide them data and those kind of information. But honestly, it's not something right now. I think there is a lot of room for tech to build a sustainable business model there, because the number of developers is also very small, right? I mean, it's not that at least in the bigger one, the ability to pay, and plus they also don't see that much of a value in terms of the tech side right now. I think what you were mentioning was on procurement of materials, aggregation, and creating some kind of business model disruption in that space. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know how much tech there is in that, honestly.
So Sarabjeet, you're dealing with pre-leased residential assets. What has been the traction like? And in comparison to pre-leased commercial assets, how has been the comparative yields?
Sure. So in India, generally people were only buying residential real estate for their own consumption, and when they move from that location to other location, they are mostly forced to put that apartment on lease or on rent. They were not buying specifically for returns or only for investment with returns into residential real estate. Traditionally, the investment was going only in land and commercial real estate. For higher returns, obviously, the regular and higher returns only in commercial real estate. Now, this is a niche which we are trying to create. There are a lot of investors in India, those who want to invest for tax saving. They want to take loans, but they don't want to invest in a residential real estate where they have to manage the property, tenant hunting, dealing with unorganized brokers, managing that asset, and so many hassles of managing an asset. So and they are not very happy or they are not very convinced to buy a commercial real estate. And commercial real estate ticket size starts higher. Even if you go through strata, then those real estate are not on your name.
Yeah.
So your family or your ethics doesn't allow that you're paying a huge sum, whether it is 10-15 lakh also, the property is not on your name. So that aspiration, that emotion, that value, so that investor was confused and was on a fence where he or she cannot afford to buy a house for themselves because they are either living in a 2 BHK or a 3 BHK apartment where they can afford the rental, but they can't afford to buy it, or they don't want to buy it. So with this solution, we are solving the problem of all such investors, whether they are young investors, those who have lesser money to invest. So we are curating assets for them, which are specifically designed, purpose-built for co-living business, and hence higher revenues. Higher revenues means higher rentals. So we are able to fetch almost 5 to 6% of rental returns for these kind of assets compared to traditional 1 or 1.5% of rental returns on the resi assets. Comparatively, there is no hassle. The returns are higher. The entry point is very, very low because when you buy a residential apartment, you are paying 10 or 20% and then you are paying EMIs and the rent is lesser. Here, comparatively, your entry barrier is very low. So here also you pay 10 or 20%, but your EMI when it starts, you're paying only net EMI. So EMI minus that rent commitment. So for example, if a studio apartment which Zeassetz is offering 25 lakh, you're paying 5 lakh rupees, you are owner on day one, and you're not paying any EMI. Fast forward, when the possession comes, the EMI is like 16,000. We are paying you 10,000 rupees fixed rent. So you're paying only 6,000 rupees net EMI. So we are solving for all with the help of technology. And on our platform, everything is transparent, visible. They can choose from multiple portfolios. And we are solving for all the stakeholders, developers, co-living players, for ourselves and for investor. And at the end, the person who's going to stay in these kind of asset with the operator.
So what kind of these pre-released assets are? Like, is it co-living or retail?
So all of them are co-living.
Co-living.
Yes.
Okay.
So we try to maximize the use of square footage. We get into design stage. As I said, these are purpose built. So we get into design stage where we design the entire asset from scratch. So that hence we are able to fetch higher revenue and rental returns for them.
Great. So Abhilash, I want to know from you, how do you, differentiate from your segment or from your company to instant buying segment, which we are seeing a tepid response in Western market. For example, companies like Zillow has already exited from it. So how are you financing the liquidity promised to the customers?
Got it. So at the end of the day, we, in some sense, we are very similar to the instant buying or iBuying model that you globally seen as well.
Yeah.
Because we offer instant liquidity, and then we further onward sell the house. The interesting thing to note though is the real estate market in India is very different to what you would see in the US.
Yeah.
One big point to note is in India, all mortgages are floating rate mortgages, meaning as the RBI revises their repo rates, people's EMIs can go higher or lower, and typically people take a mortgage over 15 years. So it's very hard for an individual to time the interest rate market, right? Whereas in the US, the most common mortgage is a 30-year fixed mortgage, which is why property prices there are extraordinarily reactive to interest rates. So if the Fed there increases their interest rate by whatever half 50.5% or so, the property price will accordingly fall immediately, and which has been one of the concerns plaguing Open Door currently. I mean, Zillow is a longer discussion. Apart from that, right, one thing we have really discovered in India is the market is just so much messier. There is no broker exclusivity. Literally it is whichever broker finds the end buyer, they get the brokerage. What that means is a broker never spends their own money in advertising the property because they don't know if they're going to get the commission. There is no MLS or data system where people can find out what should be the fair price. There is no price discovery as such. The legal process is extraordinarily complicated. There is no standard sale lead that people can go. There is no title insurance, which means every buyer needs to be beware of themselves for the legal diligence. All of this are problems that we can solve, particular to India, which is why we are able to create value independent of market conditions, because there is so much more we are offering the customers.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what that translates to, right? I think we've been a year old. From the time we have launched, we have almost always had like double-digit gross margins, which just does not happen internationally. And I always believe that you deserve to make a margin if you're offering value to the customer.
Yeah.
And here there is just so much more to solve, which is why we are able to offer more value. And I feel this instant buying has a better product market fit in a country like India, where things are so much messier, as opposed to the US, where things are more straitjacketed.
So I want to understand, and it's just my personal curious question, that these recent RBI hikes have impacted the home loan interest. So does it impact IB homes also when such RBI hikes happen?
So it impacts us to the extent of consumer demand being impacted. And right now we have not seen any drop in demand for homes. Okay. And we are seeing the same thing across both secondary and primary sales.
Great. Kshitij, I want to know from you, how are you going to monetize data in future? Like what all we can expect from TEAL in future in terms of even expansion also, and how are you going to monetize the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in India, I've been working in the sort of data side now for some time. Data is not sold for very high value, quality data. So the amount of investment required often does not give you the return to go through the effort in creating quality data, right? It's sort of very commodified. So I think pure play data as a service providers it's not necessarily easy to scale that, and you don't see many models of that are just doing only in India and are able to get good growth in terms of the overall value of the company. What we are looking for is more on the service and the fulfillment side, and also on the going towards the insurance side. I think Abhilash mentioned very interestingly title insurance, right?
Yeah.
So there is no title insurance market in India right now. There's no retail title insurance market in India. I think what we have learned over time is that the de facto title insurer in India is the mortgage lender. Because there are a lot of cases of people who are taking even a notional or nominal sort of mortgage on a property where they may be able to afford it. Right? They may be sold something where they'll take, let's say, 15% of the value of the property as a loan from a reputable lender, because they think that gives them this sort of assurance that they would have done the due diligence, right, to make sure all that is there, right? So now there are different pieces in terms of how do you do that due diligence, how do you kind of give that assurance, and how do you quantify the risk at different levels? So for us, what we are working is for more deeper integration on the mortgage lending side, right, with the existing customer and also additional customer, providing more analytics on how the portfolio looks like and what the trends are based on that information, right? And so that, I think, and the last bit is on the services side, which is, so for instance, now we've got a very good understanding of what the different laws, rules, regulations are, the process of registering a property, the issues that can come out. In fact, a lot better than what the existing frameworks that are used by even the older lenders. And that's why now, they're shifting to using our system, because we're able to standardize a lot of those processes that were otherwise very fragmented and were distributed. So for us, I think the main motivation is to be able to reduce the amount of noise in this sector broadly when it comes to knowing who has the right title, whether there is any kind of potential dispute that could go on, and that could be either for a lender or for a home buyer. Right? For us to build a sustainable business model, we started with the lending side, and that's why we think our kind of near-term product sort of trajectory will be. But the core motivation is that if it's able to reduce litigation in the sector, if it's able to reduce potential loss of an entire value of an entire property, which is obviously devastating for households and also for the loan books of different lenders, right? And so I think the direction we are working towards is working within the context of that in India it's very hard to have a retail title insurance product standalone, and we've talked to various lenders. In fact, we started with that at the early days. We talked to various insurers, and it's very hard to actually have a retail because the pricing just does not work. So even the policies that have been tried and floated in the past have 3-4% of the value of the property, which is too high for anyone to purchase. Whereas in the US it will be that you would buy a close to $1 million home, and you would pay maybe $2,000 on a title insurance policy one time, right? So to make that market work, I mean, there's a big gap right now. So there's a lot that still needs to be done there, but I think it's an interesting area where once government process also more digitized, more formalized, standardized, so on and so forth. I think all that will help in going in that direction.
And what expansion plans you have for the team?
So first is on the geographic expansion in terms of the geographies we cover, the states and the districts. We basically onboard an additional district when we know we have a certain threshold of confidence in terms of data availability, in terms of our understanding of it, and also what we can provide. Then the second is in terms of going in, assisting more in terms of the process of doing due diligence for the lenders. So now we also have a full stack legal review process where we've kind of standardized the process. Initially it was, we started with the data, then it's sort of these kind of reports, then it's more on the legal side, also on the technical side, which is on the valuation side. There's a lot there, and then building out a series of analytics and the process improvement for different lenders to be able to reduce their turnaround time, sometimes cut it dramatically, improve the quality of the loan book, improve the entire experience for the customer in terms of processing. For instance, requiring minimal information there, putting in place checks, alerts, so on and so forth. So kind of SaaSifying in a way this entire mortgage process.
So Abhilash, in Mumbai, we have seen platforms like Zaki and Home Exchange offering certain in the same platform where IP homes are. What are your offerings in comparison to that? How are you different from them?
So I think each company has a slightly different offering. On our side, we have tried to keep it as simple as possible. If somebody wants to sell a property, we make them an offer within 7 to 10 days. We put our money against that offer, acquire rights to the property. We then refurbish it and sell it. That's essentially our business. The other companies have slightly different modifications, but broadly, I still believe all the companies are solving towards a similar kind of a problem.
Right. Also, Kshitij, I want to know from you is we have seen initiatives from government coming in, for example, like Digital India Land Records Modernization Program, which is also called TEAL RMP, which is going to add fuel to your narrative. How you feel these initiatives by government is going to help TEAL as particular?
Yeah, so just in terms of context, TEAL RMP has been around since I think 2005 or 6, and it's actually a newer incarnation of previous RMP, but basically digitization of land records in India has been going on, and the discussion has been going on since the 70s. So, if you talk to different people, they'll say it's very slow. Right? It's been 50 years that, still we're talking about it. I've heard this from senior bureaucrats in government itself who are saying the same thing. And it is true that, but it's a difficult problem, right? So think about it. So you're basically, when a state government decides to digitize land is a state subject, right? So every state is different. So now if a state government decides to digitize land records, you're disintermediating someone on the ground. Usually a tehsildar who usually, depends on some, whatever, it's a loss of power agency, whatever is that in that entire system, right? So you're trying to remove that. So they take some political will also to be able to push that and also maintain that, right? So different states may have taken initiatives of Karnataka, basically in Bangalore now, right? Karnataka had this project called the Bhumi project, which is in fact there's a World Bank study on it. It was the earliest incarnation of the World Bank going and looking at that there is a very good initiative by state government, an IAS officer who really pushed through it and did a very good job at showcasing it. But now Karnataka has sort of lost ground to other states who have been doing a much better job of more recently, digitizing and creating more transparent system of making this information available. So for us, no doubt, and for everyone really in the ecosystem, this is something that needs to be done. It should be a priority. People should be talking about it. There should be political sort of demand, for to say that a state government that is able to standardize, make the process of registering a property, transacting it easier, seamless, transparent, is good for everyone, right? For the entire citizens, for the market, and so on and so forth, and also making that information public, so there's no corruption. There's limited amount of and also intermediaries, who are basically benefiting from information arbitrage, right? Who would essentially add to the cost of registering, transacting property, lending against it, and it's a market that then facilitates all this murky, kind of things going on. So they should be transparent. And we, in fact, try to work with different governments, different state governments, at a center level to also how to improve the processes, right? What are the existing ways they look at this information, collect this information, how they can make it more transparent, standardize processes, and so on and so forth. And also, but what we can't do, which should be done by other also people and it will benefit everyone, is to advocate for more transparency, standardization, open data, for this and that, which will benefit everyone. In the US, I think Zillow and all these models are built on that, right? And so in India, there's a huge potential for that. So we're very bullish on it because now there seems to be a lot of interesting initiatives, very quick changes that are going on in different states. And there's some competitive federalism aspect also. Bihar has recently made some very good strides. MP has made some very good strides. So there are certain states that you would really not expect who have come from out of sort of nowhere and done a very good job at improving these processes, putting the information out there. So
yeah, great. Abhilash, what Kshitij has pointed out is a quite well thing by government initiatives needs to advocate for this sector, right? So what initiatives you feel government should bring in to help Proptech sector?
I think, so Kshitij already spoke about bringing in more data, digitizing more records. I think not only does that help the Proptech sector, but it helps the real estate sector, it helps people in general. Apart from that, I think what helps real estate in most cases also helps Proptech. Because at the end of the day, we are building on top of an existing market, existing demand and supply. And there are several things, right? I think a lot of our processes are extremely outdated. So something like registration, the fact that it is such a logistical nightmare to do title transfer of property is, I don't even understand why that's such a thing, like there are people who live across the world. For them to sell a property, they need to make multiple trips to India. In terms of just smoothing that out, I think there's a lot that can be done. The second thing is India has extremely high and extremely unfair transfer fees when it comes to property. These are the stamp duties. Worldwide, there have been several case studies to show that, getting rid of like a percentage stamp duty or getting rid of a percentage-based transfer fee just promotes a lot more liquidity, and two, actually reduces corruption, reduces black money to a very large extent. However, it's such an important revenue generator for states that it requires tremendous political will to make a change in that.
as you pointed out, stamp duty, I have read this somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong. In comparison to other Western countries, India is the highest country which is paying the stamp duty. So do you feel this is unfair, and what kind of government initiatives government should bring in for Proptech sector?
I think yes, it is very unfair, and whenever there is scope or there is a requirement of revenue generation, certain state government, offers a reduction of stamp duty. Like in Maharashtra, recently they announced, and it is taken back on the registration fee. There are other impacts also when you kind of invest into real estate. This is one of the major impact on a home buyer or a real estate buyer, because he's paying a good chunk of money which is going out of his pocket on the stamp duty and registration. So that should be brought down. This will definitely help the sector. And once it is helping the sector, as Abhilash just said, it will eventually help the Proptech also. All the Proptech players will benefit out of this.
True. In closing note, quickly I want to ask from you, in a startup lingo we use the word moat. So please tell us, our audience, about your business moat, starting from you, Abhilash.
Sure. So our business is essentially making offers to buy properties and further sell. I think there are two important moats here. One is how we end up pricing and predicting liquidity for a property, which is what we have built on top of all the existing data and existing features for a particular house. And the second moat is softer, but there is a lot of operational nous required to run a business like this. And it's not something that can be easily built out.
Great. Sarabjeet?
So our moat for Zeassetz is to bring real estate in everyone's reach. So that's one. The second is the cost of ownership should be so low, along with a zero worry investing thought process. So these are the few.
Great. Kshitij?
Yeah, so when we started TEAL 4 years ago, we set out to build equivalent of a CIBIL for real estate in India. That's what we were motivated by, because we thought that there is a good reason for it to be done, just the way CIBIL entered personal lending. Before you didn't have any idea about the creditworthiness of individual users. Obviously, starting from a small base, starting 2004, became mandatory by RBI to be collected for all loans, and it did make a difference in terms of providing a base level of trust for them, right? So we started building on that database. Initially, very early days, bootstrapped. We got help from a few stellar interns. And we now from that journey, we have more than 100 million properties covered. So we believe we have a good, not just an existing database, but also good understanding of the system. We've done extensive research and documentation of how all of these rules, regulations, all this works across every state. Right? So we have good expertise, but I think get to the most important point, which is our team, which has been absolutely stellar. And I think that really gives us the biggest moat, because they have a very good understanding of the space. They're also very committed to the cause, and they are very dedicated and believe in the sort of overall mission. I think that and they've been working very hard in getting us to this stage, and I think that's our strongest.
So profitable business, I was also talking in terms of monetization. What we are seeing right now in current Proptech sector, all of them are raising funds, or some are on the bootstrap front, but there are very few ones who are converting their business into a profitable one. So my question was, in terms of, do you think there's a certain tech which will, of course, like procurement, how he pointed out, will definitely always raise a profit business. But is there any other sector in Proptech which will garner a profitable business, where the entrepreneurs can also monetize the tech, can also make the business quite profitable?
I want to add on Kshitij's point from earlier, right? Tech alone, it's hard to build something out where just I'm selling the technology and I'm immediately making profits. I think it has to go hand in hand with business model innovation, right? I also, disagree with you in saying that there are no profitable Proptech companies. We've seen, say, something like co-working, for example, right? That's a business model innovation similar to co-living, and companies are either already profitable or very close to being profitable, because it's some layer of technology along with business model innovation.
Right.
I think most industries, things are going to be built similarly. In PropTech, I feel it's especially so.
So is there a particular sector you want to point out, or like how we said, Contech is going to have a certain profitable business? Is there any other particular sectors you feel are going to have a bright future?
It's like this, right? Real estate is by far the largest asset class in India. It affects most people in the country. I believe that any business model which is worthwhile will inevitably be profitable in the sector. I think it's hard to pick and choose.
That's quite a safe answer given by Abhilash. What do you want to add to that, Sarabjeet?
I think I said that I believe being into this industry from different lenses. When I entered, I entered as a real estate broker, helping people to choose what to buy from that bouquet available in the market through Proptech, that tech platform. Then I moved to a developer, and then I moved to co-living sector, and now I'm building my own business where I'm trying to help people to choose the right investment product, and which is backed by real estate. With all this experience, I think, again, I'll reiterate, property management, this is something which will pick with the help of technology. As he said that, only tech cannot, can help in that. There has to be a business model. So I think this business model, investment, because all the Gen Z, millennial, they want to buy real estate, but they don't want to stay there. They don't want to use it. They want to use it for themselves. They want to invest into for multiple reasons: tax saving, ownership of a real estate. That's the aspiration, to buy a property in these larger cities. So I think that will grow a lot, and there all these users or buyers need a lot of technology, because their day starts and ends with technology. So I think these two sectors, I truly believe that will grow a lot, and they'll be very much sustainable and profitable.
Kshitij, your point?
For me, it's mortgage tech. Essentially, if you look at mortgage penetration in India, we have about 11% mortgage to GDP ratio. In China, it's 18%. In the US, it's 56%. If we take in the next 5 years, there's a current $300 billion market for mortgages, projected to double to $600 billion. There's a huge scope in terms of how much financing can be given for assets that are already owned by Indian households. Because one of the Indian households hold a much higher proportion of their wealth in housing, real estate, land than do in other parts of the world, right? And it's something that has to do with our history, whatever it is, a combination of reasons, but it's not leveraged, right? And so there's a lot of innovation that has to be done in terms of increased mortgage access, refinancing, securitization of those mortgages, because that's not something that really exists right now, because you don't have very good underlying data on the risk-value trade-off of individual properties, right? And so that's why for us, when we entered this sector, we said we'll first try to build enough of a data layer so to be able to then build innovations on top of that. But I think the future for me, at least in PropTech, is not exactly PropTech, it's somewhat of a fintech also, this you could say. But that's, I think, where the most interesting opportunity will be.
Talking about technology, I want to understand from all of you, with the upcoming advent of technology like Metaverse, AI, ChatGPT, will we see a future in real estate where the physical touch points will get eliminated in India, or is it just talk? What is your take on that? Starting from you, Sarabjeet.
Okay, so first of all, I appreciate all these technologies, and happy to see them live. We were just talking, but now everything is live now. So I feel that it will bring a lot of change. But having said that, it will not eliminate the personal touch or that emotional touch which we want. As Indians, we're very emotional when we buy or invest into real estate and gold. We want that personal touch, so that relationship. So I don't think that will be eliminated 100%, but it will come down drastically. While making the final decision, yes, that would be required. But this all will bring a lot of understanding, clarity, and minimize the personal touch or physical touch when these kind of transactions are happening.
So what do you think, Kshitij?
Yeah, I mean, I think the complete elimination seems impossible. Even in the US and all these markets, it doesn't happen, right? I mean, there's institutional brokerages, good quality, reputation. Some of them are unicorn, in fact. Tech-enabled brokerages, all that. I think the process augmentation will be there in terms of standardization of processes, better transparency, reliability, and then the supply chain of providing different elements of that piece, ultimately, which will make the job a little easier, right? And also give some quality assurance, right? So, like for instance, our case, we can say on the legal, due diligence side, technical due diligence, then there would be in terms of the documentation, maybe at some point different sub-register office will eliminate the need to go in person to register a property entirely, maybe, then that will also improve. So, but it has to be, I think it's in the context of all of these other things working out. It can't be like someone comes and says, I'll sell you a VR way to, sell houses. I don't think there's a market for that in India right now.
I kind of echo what both of them are saying. See, buying a house in particular is usually the largest purchase made by a family, especially if it is a house that they are looking to live in, where it's not an investment. People need to have a touch and feel. Worldwide, we are not at a stage where people are buying virtually. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, currently developers are still just selling homes on a brochure. Yeah. So potentially like, virtual reality, augmented reality, where you could maybe have somebody do a walkthrough of what a fully built up structure will definitely help the sales. But in terms of, fully built out properties, I don't see it being completely virtual in the near future.
So during pandemic, we noticed a lot of companies in VR space had collaborated with developers, and that time was the time where developers also took notice of how technology is going to help them sell. And we saw a lot of NRIs, even in Indian home buyers. We have noticed even from Godrej and Embassy Coating, during pandemic, they were selling houses directly from virtual also. It was helping them, which they never thought this could happen. Indian home buyers, जैसे आप लोग trust की बात कर रहे हैं कि every home buyer would like to have a touch and feel of it, or every home buyer would like to know कैसा दिखता है. But when it comes to branded developers association, and then when it comes to VR, people were opening up about it. So do you think it was just because of pandemic people were opening about this idea, or we will actually see this happening with the help of Metaverse also, where you can see exactly kaisa unit hai, kaun sa unit pe kya bika hai, and you can see how that unit will look at?
So I think it will help. There is no doubt about it. Even for the properties we sell, we do like a full walkthrough, and we have seen that it helps in getting a really high intent customer to the site, where maybe after spending 15 minutes in the property, they're able to, sign or do a booking. However, will it completely eliminate it? I'm not sure at this moment.
Does anyone want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been seeing it now for quite a few years. I think housing 8 years ago, they also had a product where you could do a walkthrough, and but it was a game. I mean, it's I think it was so there's two distinctions, right? So first, you have to separate the primary market from the secondary market. So 70% of India's real estate market is secondary, right? It was already built and you're reselling, so on. Then you have the primary market, which quite a few properties will not be built. In which case, you need a better way to visualize what the project will look like once it's built. Right? In that case, you could do a walkthrough of the thing, which is basically what you have as an artist rendering in a sort of more, 3D type of way. I mean, it helps. But again, I think as Abhilash was saying, it helps you through that journey of finding out more and visualizing how the project will look like once it's done. But obviously, the rest of the things that need to be taken care of in terms of the uncertainty associated with the project gets completed or not, those are not going away anytime soon. So I think it can help, but I find it hard to believe that it would eliminate the need to visit or at least meet with someone, before, or talk to someone on the phone before, making such a big decision.
So maybe for Indian real estate buying, we'll see a bit of a slow momentum in this, because currently if you go ahead buying stuff for e-commerce website, people are going ahead and buying shoes ho ya kapde ho, but when it comes to home, like log bolte kapda, makan and roti, when it comes to home, you are still saying it's going to take time for it to completely get eliminated by technology, right?
Yeah, definitely. And as the gentleman said, that the cost of real estate is so high, it's the highest purchase for any home buyer, whether in India or abroad. So and there's emotional touch also. But with these technologies, I think the process will take lesser time. The filtration will be very good, and minimal interaction. The human interaction will happen, but that also will take some time.
So, Abhilash, Y Combinator has, taken few Indian PropTech companies of late, backing them up. How was your experience, or how was your learning with that kind of experience when Y Combinator got involved with Ivy Homes?
So Y Combinator is one of the best accelerators in the world, right? And I think what they have really broken down to like almost like a science is how you end up spending the first 3 months in building a company, whether it is about building out like a proof of concept, whether it is about fundraising. And I think that is independent of sectors. And I think that's the biggest value add that any accelerator has. And Y Combinator does an especially good job with that.
Is it true, like recent tweet I've read from a founder saying कि जो Y Combinator का form होता है, it's like a roadies interview. Like they will make sure that you are ready for each and every question and then you submit the form.
I mean, personally, I don't think that was the case. We had, when we applied, it maybe took us an hour and a half to get the whole thing done.
Nice. And Kshitij, InfoEdge has backed you. How has been their role in your, how is the ecosystem of theirs has helped you, and how their role has been there for TEAL? Also, have you guys explored 99 acres, or are you planning to explore with them as well?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I have to say we were extremely lucky, to work with InfoEdge, and it's a really stellar set of entrepreneurs who built a business, an internet business from scratch, and really the heyday, early days of that entire sector. When hardly anyone had computers, and even fewer had the internet. But they started building, Naukri, and then 99 acres and so on. So, and they really know the Indian market really well, and particularly from a sales mindset, like what will sell, what not to over invest, or when to not believe the hype. Because I think they also saw a lot of hype cycles come and go, but they've sort of stood their ground in terms of what is a sustainable. There's a lot of respect, from there, and they've been very good in terms of providing different inputs, and we speak to them often, and so that has been very helpful. In terms of 99 acres, we've had different discussions with their team. They also have a really good team working in this space. They understand very well. They've seen also different cities. Well, they've built a good business in that, which is a space which is now very crowded. But they've sort of continued, having a very solid business there. So we've in fact had sales agreements with them, which is arm's length. So it's not because they're independently managed entity. So whatever we've done with them, and we keep on having discussions of how more we can provide there. But again, I think the distinction is our primary customers are the lending institution, and their work is not in that direction. So far, there is that bit of difference. But that said, in the future, maybe we might be able to integrate closely with them.
Right.